The Christmas gift that ended my 15-year marriage. The most dangerous gifts are not the ones that tick, or the ones that explode with fire. The most dangerous gifts are the ones that are wrapped in beautiful paper, tied with a perfect silk ribbon, and placed gently under a glowing Christmas tree. These are the gifts that destroy a life not with violence, but with the quiet, devastating weight of the truth. It is often said that love is blind, but sometimes comfort is even blinder. A man can live in a house for 10 years and never notice that the foundation is rotting away beneath his feet, simply because the carpets are thick and the heating is warm. This is the story of Lovemore, a man who thought he had everything, and how one small box on Christmas Eve took it all away. Lovemore was a man who defined himself by his success. He was a wealthy architect who designed skyscrapers that touched the clouds. He was used to looking at the big picture, at the grand design of things. He lived in a sprawling home just outside of London, a place with high ceilings and marble floors that echoed when he walked. To the outside world, Lovemore had the perfect life. He had the money, the reputation, and he had Mirriam. Mirriam was his wife of 15 years. She was beautiful, elegant, and quiet. She was the kind of woman who organized charity dinners and remembered every birthday. She was the perfect accessory to his successful life. For the last 10 years, their marriage had been peaceful. There were no arguments. There were no shouting matches. There was only a calm, steady rhythm to their days. Lovemore believed that this peace was a sign of a strong marriage. He believed that they had moved past the troubles of their early years. He often congratulated himself on how well they had recovered from the incident. The incident had happened 10 years ago. Lovemore had made a mistake. He had an affair with a younger woman from his office. It was brief, and he had ended it, but Mirriam had found out. He remembered the day she discovered the truth. She did not scream. She did not cry. She just sat in the garden, looking at the roses, and then she told him that she forgave him. She said they would move forward. Lovemore took her word for it. He bought her a diamond bracelet, and they never spoke of it again. Or so he thought. Christmas Eve arrived with a heavy blanket of snow covering the estate. The house was decorated to perfection. A massive tree stood in the center of the living room, covered in gold and silver ornaments. A fire crackled in the fireplace, casting long dancing shadows on the walls. It was a picture of domestic bliss. Lovemore poured 2 glasses of expensive wine and sat on the velvet sofa. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He looked at Mirriam, who was sitting opposite him. She was wearing a red dress, and she was smiling. It was the same smile she had worn for 10 years. It was polite. It was gentle. But if Lovemore had looked closer, if he had truly looked into her eyes, he might have seen that the smile did not reach them. Her eyes were cold, like the winter wind outside. They exchanged gifts. Lovemore gave Mirriam a set of keys to a new luxury car. He watched her face for a reaction. She smiled, thanked him politely, and placed the keys on the table. It was not the reaction he had expected, but he brushed it off. Then it was her turn. She reached under the tree and pulled out a small rectangular box wrapped in dark blue paper. She handed it to him with steady hands. Lovemore felt a surge of curiosity. He tore the paper away to reveal a simple, leather-bound notebook. It looked old, but expensive. He looked up at her, confused. She did not say a word. She simply gestured for him to open it. Lovemore opened the cover. The first page had a date written on it. It was the date from exactly 10 years ago, the day she had found out about his affair. He began to read. It was not a diary of emotions. It was a ledger. It was a record of facts. On the first page, she had written a detailed account of his betrayal. She described exactly what he had done and how it had broken her heart. But the entry did not end with sadness. It ended with a promise she had made to herself. She had written that she would stay with him, but not for love. She would stay to prepare. Lovemore turned the page. The next entry was dated a month later. It detailed a bank transfer. She had started moving small amounts of money into a separate account. He turned another page. It was a record of a property she had purchased in her maiden name, a small cottage in the south of France. He flipped through the book faster now, his heart pounding in his chest. Page after page, year after year, she had documented her plan. She had documented every time he had ignored her. She had documented every time he had been selfish. And alongside these emotional notes, she had documented her path to freedom. She had gone back to university in secret and finished her degree. She had started an online business and had grown successful without him ever noticing. She had consulted lawyers to ensure that when she left, she would take exactly half of his fortune, down to the last penny. She had not been smiling because she was happy. She had been smiling because she was patient. She had been smiling because she knew that every day that passed was one day closer to her freedom. Lovemore looked up from the book, his face pale. The room felt suddenly very cold. He looked for Mirriam, but the chair opposite him was empty. He had been so absorbed in the book that he had not heard her stand up. He had not heard her walk out of the room. Panic seized him. He stood up and ran to the hallway. The front door was slightly open, letting in a drift of snow. He ran up the stairs to their bedroom. He threw open the door to her walk-in closet. It was completely empty. The clothes were gone. The shoes were gone. The suitcases were gone. There was no note on the pillow. There was no letter on the dresser. The notebook downstairs was the only explanation she felt he deserved. She had not left in a rage. She had not left in a hurry. She had left with the same precision and planning that she had used to manage his life for the last decade. Lovemore walked back downstairs slowly. The fire was dying down. The Christmas tree lights twinkled cheerfully, mocking the silence of the house. He sat back down on the sofa and looked at the leather book. He realized then that the woman he thought he knew did not exist. He had been living with a stranger. He had thought that her silence was forgiveness, but it was actually calculation. He had thought her smile was love, but it was actually a mask. For 10 years, Lovemore had believed he was the one in control. He thought his money and his charm could fix anything. He thought that saying, "I am sorry," once was enough to erase a deep betrayal. He did not understand that trust is like a mirror. Once it is broken, you can glue it back together, but the cracks will always show. And if you look into that mirror long enough, you will see a distorted reflection. Mirriam had given him the ultimate Christmas gift. She had given him the truth. She had stripped away the illusion of his perfect life and left him with the reality of who he was. He was a man who had taken a good woman for granted. He was a man who had underestimated the quiet strength of someone who had been hurt. He sat alone in his cold, expensive house. The new car keys lay on the table, useless. The luxury, the status, the reputation, none of it mattered now. The house was just a pile of bricks and marble. It was not a home. It had not been a home for 10 years. It had been a waiting room. And now the waiting was over. Lovemore realized that the punishment for his betrayal was not the shouting or the fighting that he had avoided 10 years ago. The punishment was this. The punishment was the realization that while he was busy building skyscrapers, his wife was busy building a life without him, right under his nose. And now she was gone, and she had taken the only thing that really mattered, her presence. This story reminds us that forgiveness cannot be bought and trust cannot be demanded. It reminds us that the quietest people are often the most observant, and that taking someone for granted is the most dangerous risk a person can take. But I want to hear from you. Do you think Mirriam was justified in planning her exit for 10 years while pretending to be happy? Or should she have left immediately when the trust was broken?